Hey everybody, this is part 2 of our Kansas City Papercut Skyline project, okay? So making some skyline or some buildings out of papercut style. So last time we did a Prince of Peace and we did a KC Power and Light building. Of course I broke the edge of it off there, but you know, whatever. Okay, so we're not going to worry about that too much. Now, I said that last time I was going to show you how to mash up a couple of different buildings together to create some original buildings. Now you can of course just take a piece of paper and fold it in half and then make up your total own building, right? So you can fold the paper in half and you can just go, okay? And just draw whatever kind of interesting and unusual building you want. But you might want to start with like a mashup of two different buildings. So this is Bartle Hall with the Sky Stations above it, and this is the Kaufman Center for the Performing Arts with those like curving lines on the sides. And so what I'm going to do is kind of combine those together into one building. So here are the two templates that we normally use. So maybe I can think about combining those two things together. So like what if I start with this idea of the Kaufman Center, right? But I make it kind of a shorter version and it has these curving lines. So it has this here and then make these little slices through here to make those curved elements of the Kaufman Center, okay? But then I also combine it with this idea of the Sky Stations and I put a couple of things on there that look kind of like that, okay? So I can have like this mashup building that is two different styles, okay? Of course I can be a little bit more creative with it and make it a little bit different than the other one too. So that might be one way to mash up a building and create something unusual, okay, out of the two different templates, okay? So that's a lot of times what people are doing when they're being creative. They're not creating things out of nothing, but they're taking ideas that they thought were interesting, okay? All of us have things that we see, okay, and we create our ideas based on the stuff that we have seen, okay, or studied and we thought was cool, and then we tried combining that with other things that we have seen or studied and thought was cool, and combining those things together in a different way or a unique way is what creativity is, okay? Very rarely, okay, and I would argue probably almost impossible for you to totally come up with something brand new that doesn't have any relationship to something that's been made before, right? You're always going to have some connection with something that you have seen that's come before, okay? And so creativity is all about how you work within those influences. All right, so let me cut this all the way out and they'll see what our little mashup building looks like. All right, cool. So I got that cut out. So let's see what this looks like. Ooh, I like it. That's pretty cool, right? So that's a combination of two of the buildings together to make a new building that didn't exist before, okay? So hopefully you've got 6 buildings or so. That's kind of what we look for. 2 of the tall buildings, 2 of the wide buildings, and then 2 buildings that are unique, okay, are your own designs, either a mashup of 2 different designs or something completely unique. So you've got all those ready to go. So I'm going to show you how to make a background today, and then you can have that ready for gluing on the building. So what we do is we're going to take a piece of paper and we're just going to make kind of a sky background. So we're going to come up with some different colors. I'm going to show you some examples and then I'll show you how I've made them. All right, cool. So here's the finished example with the buildings glued on. You can see the purple, the orange, and the yellow in the background, sort of a sunset idea. Okay, this is made by taking chalk or chalk pastel and blending it all together, and then we seal it down with some diluted glue. So I'll talk to you about that in a moment. Okay, so this is a really big piece of paper, the 12 by 18 paper. Depending on what size your buildings are, you may need to see if you can find a bigger piece of paper. If the buildings are smaller, maybe something smaller will work. Here are several examples. I'm just going to put some of these up so you can see some different things that you can do. So here's kind of that same idea with the purple and the blue and the orange. You could just make it all like black or dark gray. So you could put like a blue together, so you could have dark blue and light blue together. This one's kind of gray, it has a little hint of green on it, like a stormy sky. And then here's one that's purple and red and orange and yellow. Here's just the light blue one. Here's one where I use the blue and the orange together and let them sort of blend in the middle with a little bit of white. So depending on if you want this to be sort of realistic or different, I mean, you could go with some green and orange sky if you wanted to. Okay, there's all kinds of things you could do. I'm not going to tell you exactly what colors you need to do, but I'm going to show you how to do this. So you're going to need some chalk or some pastel, not oil pastel because that won't blend very well. You need some chalk pastel, something that's going to end up being a little bit messy when we do this. Okay, so I got my thing set up here. So I've got the paper that I want to use for my background. This is just a smaller piece that I'm going to use to show you how to do this. Depending on what size you want, you can do whatever you want. And then I've got some chalk pastels here, okay? You could try regular chalk if you had it. The sidewalk chalk actually might work if you still have some of that hanging around. What's cool about this technique is that the chalk or the pastel doesn't really have a binder in it, okay? So paint is made up of a few different things, but two important things are the pigment, which is the color, okay, and then the binder, which is whatever the paint uses to stick the color to the paper, okay? So watercolor paint uses something called gum arabic, and acrylic paint actually uses acrylic to stick things to. Oil paint uses oil to stick the color, the pigment powder, to the paper, okay? And chalk pastels like this don't have any real binder in them, so they don't actually stick to the paper, which is good because you can erase it a little bit if you want to, okay? But it's also bad because it stays kind of messy. So put a little bit of this chalk on there and then take a paper towel and fold it together until you can make this little pillow type thing. And then you're just gonna blend this together, okay? The more color you have on your paper, the darker your sky is going to be, but it also might be a little bit messy. So you probably want to put a piece of newspaper or another piece of paper or a mat or something underneath while you do the blending, okay? So I usually work from whatever my darkest color is down into my lightest color, and then I can blend those things together, okay? And we'll blend those all up, and we'll end up with these colors blended all nicely together into one sky. So if you're going for a sky thing, don't move up and down vertically, but just move horizontally across, and you'll blend that all into the paper, okay? Now, this is going to be messy. It's going to have chalk dust on your hands and everything, and that chalk dust is going to get all over your buildings unless we bind it to the paper, okay? But this is not paint, so it doesn't have a binder in it, so we're going to have to mix up our own binder. So what I want you to do, if you can, is find some white glue, regular white glue, and add a little water to it, and then we're going to make a little paint that we can use as a binder. The other thing you can use probably is that stuff called Mod-Podge, which is kind of the same idea. It's just a little bit diluted, and it will act as a glue to stick the pigment, the powder, to the paper. So let me get that ready and I'll show you what we're going to do. Okay, so here we go. So I have a cup to do my mixing in, and then I have just some regular white glue, okay? And so what you want to do is just make a thin paste of the glue. So you'd be surprised, you don't need a ton, but just open up the bottle and put a little bit of glue in there, and then you're going to add water and mix that up together, okay, so that you're going to have some paint. I've already have one glue bottle that was almost out. When it gets toward the end, I just fill it up with some water, and then I have this glue and water mixture all ready to go, okay? So I can pour that into there, and that makes for a glue and water mixture that's a little bit like Mod-Podge, okay? So what you're going to do then is you're just going to paint this whole thing. These cheap little sponge brushes work pretty good for this, but if you want to use a regular paintbrush, that's fine. Just make sure you wash it out really well, or it'll get kind of stiff and sticky. Okay, so I'm going to mix this up together a little bit since I have those two things in there, and then I'm going to start again with my darkest color and move down to my lightest color. So I'm just going to put a thin layer of this glue mixture over the whole surface of my chalk, okay? And that glue is going to do what glue does and stick the pigment to the paper, and when it's dry, it'll be stuck there, okay? That's exactly what it means to be a binder, is to bind something or stick something or tie something to something else. So this is our binder for our chalk pastel, for our pigment, okay? So in a way, we just made paint. But not having the binder in there lets us mix the colors and blend the colors really easily beforehand, okay? So I'm going to blend that all together, and the process of using the brush to blend lets me blend everything together just a little bit better. So once I have that all done, we're going to let that dry, and it has to dry overnight, okay, so that it's all the way ready to go, or at least for several hours, okay? So we're going to let that dry, and when we come back next time, we will attach the artwork to the background, okay? So there's not too much else to know about that, so just let that dry and then just glue things down. So I'll go grab one that's already dry, and I'll show you how to glue things together in order to make a background picture. Alright, so I got 4 buildings here together, and so basically we're just going to glue these down. When you turn this building over, just put your dots of glue on the bottom of the building, and so when you glue it down, if that bottom is stuck down, then you can lift this part up and you can tuck in buildings behind it, right? So you can put the building in here behind it more easily than if you've glued the whole building down. So what I do is I kind of move them around and arrange them so I get something that I like, okay? Remember we had that tear part there that was so sad, but you can just overlap it with another building and then hide that away, okay? And then we can place this one in behind here, and then they're overlapping as well. If I want that one to be seen a little better, I can sort of move it up here, okay? And then I can try to cover that building with other buildings so that it doesn't look like it's floating. Right now it looks like it's floating, so I'm gonna need some more buildings to make that work. So I'll probably need to put it down here, but I think it looks so cool that I think I'm going to put it in the foreground here, okay? And you can have buildings be behind other buildings like this if you want to. You just have to place them in there so that they don't look like they're floating. Now this one looks a little taller, but it doesn't look like it's floating in the background, like it's a rocket ship taking off and flying through the sky, although that might be cool too, Okay, so you can place buildings behind other buildings so that they look like they're taller than they actually are by hiding them behind the other buildings. So you can build your scene that way. And once you have everything glued down, then just pick up the ends and put a dot of glue on behind and stick everything down so that it doesn't come apart. Okay, then just sign your name at the bottom and you're finished up. Okay, the other thing that I've been thinking about trying is this idea of making them three-dimensional, like by folding the building a little bit and getting it to stand up. Okay, but you probably have to fold the bottom of the building under a little bit and create almost like a tab sort of thing. So for example, I've got this Prince of Peace building here. I could fold this so that it kind of went around in a circular way, okay? And then if I wanted to glue it onto a background, maybe I could fold this one up and create a background with it, okay? Or fold these little pieces down here underneath so that they were like little feet or tabs for the building, and then I could glue that onto another sheet of paper and create a three-dimensional cityscape as well, which I think would be kind of cool, but I've never done it that way before. But you have some time to try it out, so see what you think. So either put everything together as a two-dimensional flat silhouetted thing, or stack them up and layer them three-dimensionally and see if that works as well. So that might be something cool to try out. So alright, try it out. Take a picture of what you make and you can share that with us at popart@popolatha.org, and we will put some of those together to share out. So I hope you guys enjoyed this Papercut cityscape, and we'll talk to you guys later. Alright, bye bye.